I'm the director of the Welcome Homeless Service Center here at Opportunity Council, and I'm the chair of this group. We meet every other month on the first Thursday at 3:30, and we're doing it by Zoom now. But I am looking forward to when we can all get back together in the same room. It would be great if you could type your name and email in the chat to introduce yourself, include any announcement that you might have, and then we can add you to our mailing list in the future so you can get agendas. I'll just share my update, which I'm going to make it brief, but it's a hot topic. The point-in-time count data analysis is complete, so we're working on writing the report right now. But I can share with you some numbers, and they're concerning. Individual people counted in 2020, and I guess I should probably clarify because this year is different because of the pandemic. Usually we recruit a lot of volunteers from the community to go out across the county and count people who may be experiencing homelessness. So we have a lot of people in the field doing that. We didn't do that this year because it's unsafe. And the unsheltered count was actually made optional, but we chose to move forward with that. So we did an unsheltered count with the homeless outreach team, and we had the coordinated entry folks just spend several days calling as many people as they could so that everybody was counted. And my initial concern was, oh my gosh, we're not going to count everybody like this. We don't have the same amount of people and effort. I am so sorry. I'm still admitting people from the waiting room. But the results are dismaying because we counted more people this year than we have in the past. See if I can share. I'm going to share my screen so you can just see it. Can you see this graph? Yeah, okay, great. So last year we counted 707 individuals. This year we counted 859. That's a really big jump. And yeah, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. And of course we have concerns about the eviction moratorium. Today at Opportunity Council, it's the first of the month, and that's when people call us to ask for assistance. Today, they received 252 requests for assistance in 5 minutes. So I have a lot of concern that the need is going to be dire and we're going to have a challenging year. I want to scroll down a little bit here and show you families with children. Oh, these are households, excuse me, not families with children. So additional households, more households than in the past, obviously. I do have numbers on families with children. There were 96 families with children counted this year, which is an increase, and that includes 311 individuals. 22% of people counted individuals this year were under the age of 18. It's very concerning. Does anyone have questions? Reactions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you better. Yeah, so that's the point in time count. The report should be out in the next few weeks. That's what I'm going to be working on next. It's going to be missing some of the data. A part of that COVID safety is we've reduced the amount of questions asked to reduce the amount of time people are interacting face to face. So we don't have as much information, but the report will be coming out and I'll let you know. I really appreciate everyone being here today. The last meeting we had, we really focused on coordinated entry and our housing system and kind of tried to identify how this is a manifestation of our local strategic plan to end homelessness. So that would speak to, there's a pillar. In fact, I will put a link to the plan in the chat. The pillar 1, collaboration, and strategy 1, centralized point of entry, was what we focused on last time. This time, we're going to focus on case management, which is also identified in the plan. Let me put this link in the chat so you can all look at the plan. The most successful housing programs for homeless individuals or families are successful because of one essential element, and that's the case management. It's a really broad term. It looks different depending on the intervention. Our last meeting, we talked about broadly, you know, a light, a minimal intervention, let's say, a medium intervention, and a long, an intensive intervention. And that's very short assistance, moderate assistance, time limited, and then permanent supportive housing. So today we're going to be talking to case managers who are actually doing this work in those types of interventions. Case management looks really different depending on the intervention. And I'm really excited to just recognize their hard work and their professional skills because they're crucial to the success of our system. Case managers focus on assessment, planning, stabilization, and support. And that these ideas are driven by the needs and strengths of the household. And it's a pretty broad scope. This can even sound familiar to people who are not case managers or other types of case managers, because this kind of work occurs across the breadth of human services in varying degrees. Case managers are relationship experts. They develop positive rapport with their clients, creating a good working relationship with service providers to maximize the benefit to the people that they're working with. So we have 3 examples today. Leah Congdon is joining us from Opportunity Council in our Community Services Department. And she is a supervisor who has supervised diversion case managers. And diversion could mean a deposit assistance. We help you move in so you avoid getting into the system, or it could mean other types of problem solving that she'll talk about more. We did have Rochelle, oh sorry, there's more people in the waiting room. Admit everybody. We did have Rochelle from Lydia Place scheduled, but she had to cancel, unfortunately. She was going to talk about rapid rehousing, that moderate intervention. But we've got Marisa Schoeppach pinch hitting today, probably from her phone because I gave her almost no notice. Marisa's the supervisor of the HOT team, the homeless outreach team in my department, this homeless service center. But she started her career at Opportunity Council as a case manager in rapid rehousing, that moderate intervention, supporting veterans. So she'll be able to speak to that. And Marisa, thanks so much. I really appreciate you doing this. And then we've got Brady Secules from Catholic Community Services here to talk about permanent supportive housing. These case management and these elements of are also elements of our strategic plan. So if you look at that plan, you'll see it described as Pillar 3, case management, and then the evidence-based strategies 2, 3, and 5, which is rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and diversion, respectively. So with that, I think I would like to turn it over to our first speaker, which would be Leah. And thank you so, so much for being here.
Of course, I'm happy to be here and joining you all today. Like Terry said, my name is Leah Congdon, and I'm a housing programs coordinator at Opportunity Council. I've supervised quite a variety of different programs at Opportunity Council over the past 7 years. Rapid rehousing, permanent supportive, short-term, emergency motel stays, all sorts across of our spectrum. And the Opportunity Council does provide quite a variety of housing services with different housing interventions. But like Terry said, I'm here today to talk about diversion case management. And as she alluded to, diversion is a model of case management that really focuses on a short-term intervention, utilizing a household's internal resources to support them in ending their episode of homelessness that they're experiencing, or to prevent homelessness. And to do that without accessing additional services that are available in the homeless housing system. So it is really designed to be short-term intervention, ideally ending their homelessness within 30 days. And it's called diversion because one of its goals is to divert households that really don't need that higher level of support from the system to free up those resources for those who need it the most. It is generally targeted at households that have fewer housing barriers and that need less case management overall. But we have seen successful diversion cases throughout the spectrum of vulnerability scores and throughout all sorts of different populations within homeless housing. At Opportunity Council, diversion conversations really start right from the get-go. So from the first time a household applies to housing in our community resource center, the staff there are discussing options that are available through the housing system, as well as other options that are available outside the system. They talk about the typical wait times for housing programs, what households' needs are, and what their goals are around housing so that they can really start planning and having a realistic picture of what the housing system might be able to provide them, and to start problem solving around whether other housing options could be a more appropriate fit for what they need and what they're looking for. They also kind of start that process of discussing steps that they might take to work on a diversion housing plan. So for example, we might start providing a list of affordable housing in the community that clients can follow up on, and talk about how they might receive deposit assistance through our system, through our programs with that, or maybe looking for a roommate and how they could connect to other people who are looking for roommates in the community. Opportunity Council's case management programs that use a diversion model focus on several different populations within our system, and that includes seniors and veterans, as well as families with children. Case management within these programs is really focused on supporting a household with a quick and permanent solution to their current homeless episode. So this case management model focuses a lot on asking open-ended questions and investigating a household's current resources and how those resources might be utilized in their diversion housing plan, and then working together with the household to develop that plan and mark out the steps that need to be taken in order to reach that household's housing goal. We really try to focus on connecting households to the needed resources to support their housing plans. So it's really not just housing. We all know that housing is related to every other aspect in life, and it's all connected to housing stability. So case managers in diversion are really focused on employment and income, as well as health and physical, mental health, all the pieces that are needed to keep and get stable housing. Another really important aspect of diversion is client choice. So from the beginning of diversion conversations, we're making all of the options as clear as possible. So anyone who is eligible for the housing pool is welcome, and we're talk about the option of staying in coordinated entry, opting for housing pool programs and waiting for a referral to rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, if that could be options for them. And also talking about what diversion can provide so that households can choose to participate in that if they think it's a good option. And also opting out at any time. So if they try diversion and it's not the right fit for them, they can always choose to go another route at whatever time makes sense for them. Diversion case managers typically have a caseload around 20 to 25 households at any given time, and are working with folks for about 30 to 60 days on their diversion plan. Sometimes that's not a realistic time frame, so we can always provide extensions if needed, if the plan might take a little bit longer. We all know that housing is challenging in our community, so that's not infrequent that it takes more than 30 to 60 days to complete a diversion plan. The frequency of case management meetings during that 30 to 60 days really varies depending on the need of the household and what their diversion plan is. A case manager might have an initial meeting and then develop their initial plan. Both parties go their separate ways, work on some of their steps, and then reconvene in a couple weeks. Or a case manager might be meeting with a client, a couple of times in that first week to really get the steps down and offer what they need to initiate the diversion plan. It's really all based on the individual's need. Terry mentioned deposit assistance, which is often a part of someone's diversion plan. And we do get referrals from people who have already secured housing, and we can just do that really quick intervention that's quite a bit shorter term. They may only need to meet with a case manager once and do some paperwork, and the case manager connects to the landlord to complete the rest of the program requirements and an inspection and that sort of thing. And then the household moves in as soon as the lease is signed. And we've seen that turnaround happen in 2 days. And it's really an awesome, quick intervention. For those people in diversion who haven't found housing yet, case managers support them in preparing for housing, addressing potential barriers to housing, such as writing letters of explanation. If they have criminal history or a poor rental history, they might do some budgeting or planning around payment plans for past money owed, if that could be a barrier to being approved for housing, or just consolidating what information they would need to complete a housing application. I know I don't remember the address of, the apartment building I lived in 2007. So it's good to have all of that stuff ahead of time. Case managers also provide a lot of advocacy and are in that role for clients as well as they're looking for community rentals, working directly with landlords, explaining what Opportunity Council can do in diversion and what it can't do, and providing landlord education around issues like source of income discrimination, habitability standards, and that sort of thing, so that we make sure that our clients are in safe and adequate housing. Diversion often involves helping households find their own rental and providing deposit assistance, but that's really not all it can be. Case managers also help clients potentially repair relationships with family or friends through mediation, maybe helping them secure a more permanent doubled up or roommate situation. Or they might help a household draft a contract regarding utility sharing so that they can have shared housing with someone in an equitable way. We've also helped with that financially over time. Many diversion case managers have done some form of mediation training so they can support those types of plans. Also motivational interviewing, harm reduction, housing first trainings. We're trying to really implement all of those models into the work we do through diversion. Some of the challenges that we face, just like with a lot of our programs, is the lack of affordable housing in the community, high barriers, and there really are a lot of households that come to the Opportunity Council for assistance and want a low level of support, that really just want, just help me get into a unit and I'm good from there. So that's what diversion can provide, but finding an affordable unit can be out of reach for a lot of people. The diversion case management usually ends around the time that a family or a household secures permanent housing, but we are always available to follow up and help with housing retention, to intervene if tenancy issues come up, and to be a resource for the landlord and for the client moving forward. So if there's tenancy issues, we might talk to a client about that, if that's brought to our attention from a landlord, or the other way around, talking to the landlord about something that's going on that is affecting a client's housing retention. One of the really great things that I see in diversion case management is that it really doesn't have to look a certain way or fit a certain mold. It's all about getting creative, trying to problem solve with people, draw out of them what they think, housing can look like for them and what that housing solution might be, and exploring outside the box ideas for how to get there. So I do have a couple success stories from our diversion case managers. I don't do the work directly, but I got a couple examples for you. So the first one is from our case manager who works with families with children who are currently experiencing homelessness. So she wrote to me, a family of 4 was forced to flee their apartment due to domestic violence and reached out to Opportunity Council for housing support. They were referred to the Family Diversion Program, where they were supported in finding stable housing in addition to other personal goals they set for themselves. The family was facing some barriers finding an apartment due to their poor credit. They were supported in writing a letter of explanation to turn into landlords to explain the situation regarding their credit, what they were currently working on to improve it, and how they would be good renters. They also tried finding a co-signer, but their co-signer did not have enough income to be approved. When the family was still struggling to find housing, Opportunity Council was able to offer a property management company a double deposit to overcome the barrier. And the family was approved for a unit. Along with the double deposit, Opportunity Council was able to pay the family's first month rent, and the client has been able to pay rent on their own ongoing from there. The second example is Lori, who was a senior in our senior diversion program. She had a physical disability and was in a wheelchair and recently moved to Whatcom County without a support system. She was referred to the program, but also was in need of shelter. So we were able to house her in a motel for a few weeks with funding from the Mount Baker Foundation. During those weeks, Lori and her case manager worked together and were able to find her an apartment within a senior community where she was surrounded by her new support system. Even though we were able to move Lori into an apartment directly from shelter, we were faced with a new obstacle of finding furniture for her to sleep on. We reached out to the Whatcom County community helpers and local churches and were able to procure a bed, sheets, towels, household items, and much more for Lori. They even moved all of Lori's personal items from her motel room directly into her new apartment. And the local food bank began delivering weekly food boxes to her doorstep, including a special Thanksgiving meal just for the holiday. The amazing combined support from Whatcom County service providers helped Lori create a safe life here in Bellingham. So there's a couple diversion examples.
Thanks, Leah. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what case management looks like from a light touch or a very minimal intervention. Marisa, are you ready to talk about rapid rehousing? Thank you for doing this, Marisa. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I want to mention, please feel free to put any questions for our presenters in the chat, and we'll ask those out after the presentations are done.
So hello, everyone. My name is Marisa Schoeppach. I am the Homeless Outreach Team Supervisor with Opportunity Council. But as Terry said, in coming to Opportunity Council, I did start out as a case manager, especially with SSVF, which is our veterans program, supportive services for veteran families. And just to kind of touch on the rapid rehousing portion of case management, Leah touched on a lot of points that kind of go across the board for everyone. When it comes to rapid rehousing, I think it's really important to pay attention to where the person is currently and in finding out what worked in the past and why aren't things working now, and really trying to work with the client to figure out plans of action so mistakes maybe that were made in the past or out of their control are talked about and we figure out how to move forward so maybe that doesn't happen again, or a new path is found to kind of create a new journey so they can feel very supported in starting something new and not really having to pay attention to, dragging the past around, because we do know that some people deal with that. I think it's really important to look at how, when you're dealing with rapid rehousing, it is a pretty fast program, and it's usually for people that are going to be able to increase their income in a short amount of time. So there are some programs that will come with a small subsidy, and as the case manager is working with the person or family, They look at ways that they can get their income increased. Does this mean looking at if they are accepted for EBT, that they would automatically qualify for BFET, which is basic food and education training? Is this something where they have the ability to connect with someone that they've known for a long time that has a job opening? Is this something where they're looking at ways to go back to school to either re-educate themselves or pick up some type of trade? And if so, what programs come with that to be able to help not only supplement their ability to survive in the meantime, but also put them in a position to be in a really great spot to move forward and be extremely steady and supported and be able to live their life in a very happy manner. Case management in general for rapid rehousing, I feel, is a very creative thing, because just as Leah said, you know, we are all about client rights, and all of this is a client-led journey. So we are going to really look into the details of where someone would like to live, what their budgeting looks like, who are they supporting in their family that may need to come into the household. Location wise, there are some people that are very specific and say, hey, I don't have a car, I need to be close to a bus line or something of that nature. There are some people that are very adamant about the area of town that they live in just because of prior experiences. So these are all things that we want to be able to discuss with people and really give them a safe space to open up and provide some background. And when we get that background, that helps us strengthen our ability as a case manager to go forward and advocate for people. Rapid rehousing is an extremely important program. It can serve a good number of folks. It is one of the most, what would I say here? The most, the quickest turnover, excuse me, that I've seen in a program, past diversion. And a lot of times when we are able to support someone with a short-term subsidy in the midst of getting their goals identified and going, you know, to be able to be placed in housing while you're getting that together is a game changer for so many people. Because, you know, once you're placed into housing, you have the ability to get in there and settle down and start a routine and feel a sense of normalcy that you didn't have before. And in doing so, that creates enough of a foundation for a lot of these people to be able to really concentrate on those goals and move forward. In the midst of all of this with case management, not only do we have to be creative, but we also have to be extremely honest. We have to be able to be very educated on where the resources are, what is available, how people qualify, what are the requirements for something, and then really working with someone to not only build up the ability to go get that resource, but to also formulate a relationship with the people that provided the resource. So in the event that they may need to come back, then there's this nice trusting relationship between two people, and it doesn't seem awkward the next time around. I think it's really important to also realize that even when someone isn't successful in rapid rehousing, that doesn't mean that they can't come back and try again. And some of these situations are simply out of people's control. And we have to be able to look at them and recognize that we cannot fault them and we have to try again. There's a lot of people that will shy away if they feel as though they've failed. And that is another big piece of case management, is follow up and follow through. So once someone has been placed, you're not just going to let them drop off your radar, right? You're going to take the time to check in on them and say, how are things going? Have you settled in? What do you need? What more can I offer you to help you keep going forward? And in my opinion, I will follow up with someone until they tell me that they feel they don't need it anymore. And I've had some people that to this day, they're still calling me once a month to say, hey, everything's great. You did so much and I appreciate it. I just wanted to check in with you. And they love to be able to have that person to check in with and know that if something were to become difficult, that just out of a pure sense of professionalism and compassion, that I'm going to take the time to talk with them and say, you know, what do you need? What can I help you with? So I think it's something that just across the board, rapid rehousing can open up so many new doors for people, can expose challenges that people didn't even realize were a challenge, can help dissolve certain barriers once they realize that they have the support they need to move forward. And from there, it just keeps people in this wonderful cycle of realizing that if they work towards a goal that is self-identified and they achieve that goal, they're still going to be able to come back to us for support in the event if they have any questions, or maybe they figured out a new goal, right? And it's funny because a few people that I still are in contact with will tell me about new things that they want to work on. And they'll say, look, I know you're not my case manager anymore. I'm just wondering if you could put me on the right path. And I am so happy to do things like that. And it's just amazing to know that they thought about calling me before just letting things get too far out of hand. So another piece to that case management is in that relationship piece, knowing that even if there's a point where maybe you disconnect with the client or maybe they exit from the service, that it's okay to come back. It's okay to call. It's okay to report that great things are happening. Terry, I have to apologize because my other phone just died. So I can't see all the other questions. And because I was doing this so last minute, I don't know if there's anything else that you feel I need to touch on.
Yes, let me get my questions up here.
Okay.
And we'll tag team it a little bit. I mean, I have two questions, and this will be for everybody in the Q&A. One is like, I'm interested to hear about those programs that assist people with housing search. So there's sometimes a misperception about our system is that you apply for housing and then you get a key to an apartment. It's not that clear cut, right? A lot of the case management work is about housing search and convincing landlords to rent to your client. So I want to ask about that. And then another question about like an example of barriers that could be overcome. And Marisa, we were chatting earlier today and you were talking about an example of working with someone who has a child support payment that's too high to afford them to live, and how case management has the expertise to, well, I'll just let you say it. You say it.
Yeah. So we've had a couple examples, just as Terry said, that we were talking about earlier. One thing I've recognized over the course of my case management portion of my career is that we have quite a few people that will talk about barriers related to past financial things, whether that be child support, a court payment of some sort, restitution of some kind. Past due bills. These are all things that we want to hear about because we want to be able to help you fix the situation and find some sense of resolve to either create a payment plan or work with a company or a person to receive some level of forgiveness, or even potentially look at just budgeting in general to be able to work that need, that cost into your budget and be able to really stay above water and survive. I think it is also really important to understand that, again, because of those client rights, as a case manager, we can speak until we are blue in the face and throw resources out, and it is up to the person whether or not they're going to take it. It is up to the person whether or not they will try it. We can do all the advocacy work. We can talk about how great a resource is. We can talk about examples that have been success stories and what have you. But again, it really boils down to the person wanting to take those steps and us encouraging them to do so. And then that first initial portion, you were talking about barriers, Terry? I'm sorry. No, I'm incorrect. Oh, you're muted, Terry.
Yeah, barriers and how you help folks overcome it. And I'm gonna put more questions in the chat for the Q&A later. So when you run out of steam, just let me know.
Okay. So as far as barriers and housing searches, barriers come in all shapes, forms, and sizes. They can be extremely small. They can be extremely large. It all depends on what you are dealing with as far as how you're going to handle making a plan with someone to handle a barrier. So when we look at barriers in general. Again, this could be a financial barrier. It could be criminal history. It could be a family dynamic of some sort. It could be that, you know, you are more than willing to pay rent, but if you were to pay rent, you wouldn't have anything left. I mean, the barriers just go on. And some of them are substance use related as well. Some people will say, you know, hey, I much rather choose the drink over housing. And then, you know, we got to stop and talk about things. And we're going to look at, why are we making these choices? And what would look differently if you were to change your mind or accept some assistance or support with that. Just as Leah said, we're always offering things like harm reduction techniques and wraparound goals and what have you. And a big piece of this is a case manager really putting in the work to ensure that they can promote someone's autonomy. We want to be able to encourage someone to be motivated to work on their goals, identify what goals they have, and then jump into those housing searches. Now, housing searches can be extremely exhausting. They can be very frustrating, and they can just downright make you angry and want to quit. Case managers are there to really be cheerleaders for it, right? We're going to help them figure out what resource route to look for. So we're always making suggestions as to where to look for rentals, what types of rentals might work for them. Again, getting creative with housing options in general. Is it time to talk about maybe the need for a roommate? Is it time to talk about downsizing because maybe somebody is dead set on, I want a 4-bedroom house, but they only really need 2 bedrooms, you know, things like that. But as far as the housing stuff for the searching in general, it's not only about taking the time to search for something, it's also about looking at the process to apply. So there's a lot of people that will say, I found this wonderful unit, and then that's where it stops. As a case manager, we want to take that extra time to go that extra step with someone and say, okay, if you are serious about this, what would it look like for you to apply? How can we help you do that? And we start looking at, how do we talk to landlords? How do we present ourselves to landlords? How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we talk about past things that may come up on a background check, and how to explain that and demonstrate that, you know, you are not that same person? How do we really look at handling a denial if it were to come in, and, you know, looking at the rights that someone has as a renter or a potential renter, and what steps can be taken. We always try and work together. We have our housing lab program that is a wonderful program that obviously is having some challenges due to COVID. But that is also a great one for case managers to kind of combine their forces with and work with Cliff to see if there's something there that would be super supportive. We also really look at how the market is affecting the client in general. And I say this kind of in a wonky way, and stick with me here. But I think the big thing is that I have had quite a few clients that, in looking at things, they say, how would I ever afford this? This is my entire check. Or I don't even make enough to afford the least expensive thing on the market. Again, that's when we start to get really creative and start looking at those options. What can we do to get you where you need to be? And we're always going to allow that client to make their final decision. We are always going to walk alongside them. And we're always going to be willing to jump in and support them in the event that they feel as though they're hitting a struggle of some sort.
Thanks, Marisa.
Yep, and I'm sorry, I'm starting to glitch out with this signal. So let me know if I miss something.
Nope, you're good. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, so our last speaker is Brady, who works in permanent supportive housing at Catholic Community Services. And Brady, I feel really awkward because I haven't met you face to face yet, but thank you for doing this and welcome.
Thank you. So I just wanted to actually give you a shout out, Terry. You said my last name, Secules, earlier, and you said it correctly, which I was really impressed by, because a lot of people don't. They get really intimidated by my last name. So good work.
I cheated. I chatted Cliff and said, how do I say this?
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Cliff. One time I was introduced to a speaking arrangement, and the person read my name and got really intimidated in the moment. They're like, "This is Brady." Oh no. Left it at that. So, thank you. Yeah, so I'm the lead housing case manager at Francis Place Catholic Community Services. I've been with Catholic Community Services for coming up on 6 years now. I've been at Francis Place for the last 2 years. I'm the lead housing case manager on a team of 4, so I have 3 other case managers that work with me. Francis Place is a 42-unit permanent supportive housing apartment building. We also have, I think we have right now approximately 25 people in Scattered Site, which is apartments around Bellingham, and we provide case management for those individuals as well. And in addition to that, I'm also just about probably a month and a half ago, I started working down in Skagit. Me and one of our staff members are going down there a couple times a week, and we are able to hotel people through the Emergency Solutions Grant. We got some grant money down in Skagit County, and so we're able to really quickly take people off the street down in Skagit and put them in a hotel, either long-term or until they find another solution. So we have about 16 clients being hoteled down in Skagit as well. I'm just gonna kind of jump through a couple of these questions. I'm just gonna give question and answer format. What are our program's goals? We provide low barrier housing to, everyone on our program is gravely disabled and has been chronically homeless. So we are working with a lot of people who everyone in our program has been homeless at least 1 year, if not quite a bit longer. We deal regularly with a lot of medical situations, mental health crises. That's kind of on a very regular basis for us. There's a question here that says, what does a typical day look like for you? And there's no typical day at Francis Place. We're kind of all over the place. Often there is, the paperwork aspect of working with clients, whether it's working with them to gather financial information or go to the bank or cashing checks or signing some sort of recertification paperwork. But then intermixed in all of that, there's, like I said, medical emergencies. I recently spoke with one of my clients, a gentleman who gave me a phone call and said, basically described what sounded to me like a concerning series of medical symptoms that he was experiencing. And then he said that he knows that he should go to the hospital, but instead of going to the hospital, that he would rather that I bought him some over-the-counter pain medication, and he wanted to manage it in the short term that way. And so I had a very long conversation with him, and I kind of gave him, and we went back and forth, and he said, I know I should go to the hospital, I'm not going to go. And I told him, I ended up, after quite a long conversation, said, it sounds like what you're communicating to me is, think of it this way, it's like half of your apartment is on fire, and you know that you should call the fire department, but instead you're calling me and you want me to come over with my garden hose to put out your apartment. And it's not really going to do the job that needs to get done. And after that, he basically said, okay, I have no further argument. Let's move forward with what needs to be done. So we got him checked out by some medical professionals, which was what was needed at the time. There's a question on here about how do you deal with kind of the tougher questions as far as poverty and race and that kind of stuff with clients. And I enjoy having tough conversations with my clients. I like being very open and honest with my clients and encouraging them to communicate frankly with me. I had another conversation with a different gentleman today who had some had some misconceptions, I guess, about what he thought I thought about him. And so I said, let's talk about it. And so we just kind of did a deep dive. It was in the car, and we were waiting in line at the bank drive-through. And so we were sitting in the car, and we had a real good heart-to-heart. And I think we both came out of it with he said that you need to open up with people and be bare your soul to another person to be able to work with and connect with people sometimes. So that was a really good conversation we had. Regarding frequency of how often I meet with my clients, I would say a lot of our services, again, just like the other two speakers have said, is client focused, and kind of the goals and the pace with which we pursue those goals are determined largely by the client. So I do it on an individual basis. Some people are very light touch, and by light touch I mean I'm checking in with them maybe once or twice a month because they're usually pretty stable. We might do paperwork on occasion, and I'll text them or I'll give them a call, but they're pretty largely self-sufficient. Other clients are much higher need, and I can engage with them multiple times per day, often several times a day and several times a week. So I'm getting quite a few interactions weekly with them. And then some people oscillate back and forth. Some people will be good for several months and not really need a lot from me, and then they'll go through a season of needing more support. There's a question about describing the general process of facilitating the move from homelessness to housing. And I will say that to get someone into permanent supportive housing, there's quite a lot of documentation that needs to be gathered, paperwork that needs to be signed. There's a whole stack of stuff that we have to work through. And the process can take anywhere from a couple of weeks, also a few weeks, to maybe even a couple of months in some situations where they might be missing an ID or social security card. That can take quite a long time to get replacements for those items. But and the other component of getting someone housed is first getting to know someone from a cold open, a cold introduction, and then getting to know them while going through paperwork. And when a person has not been resting well because they're sleeping out on the street and for at least a year, if not quite a bit longer, sitting down in an office environment can be quite a jarring experience. To have them sit down and do paperwork. So often it's, can we get you some water? Can we get you a snack before we launch into this paperwork? Maybe the first couple times that we meet, it's just getting to know a person before we even jump into the paperwork, because we have to, work through, are you in a safe spot right now? Do you need to move to another location? I've met with clients out on the street. I've tracked people down. The homeless outreach team is obviously a great help, but I've asked them kind of where a person stays, and I've tracked people down kind of at their encampment before to get paperwork signed. There's a question in here about how do you advocate for your clients, or give an example of advocating for your clients. And I just remember a time when I'd been working with a client for probably a month and a half, and we were about to, we'd been working on gathering the documentation and paperwork for quite a long time, and we were about to move forward with moving this person into an apartment, a scattered site apartment. And we were about 3 days away. It was scheduled. We were just waiting for one last piece of paperwork to be signed off on. And at that point, the Bellingham police served this person with a 24-hour notice that if they didn't move, this was pre-COVID, if they didn't move, their encampment was going to be swooped because it was downtown. And that was a problem for me because I knew where their camp was. I kept meeting them at their tent. That's how we were scheduling. They didn't have a phone, so that's how we were scheduling these appointments to work on paperwork. And if they moved and I didn't know where they were, we weren't going to be able to move them in after all this work. So I ended up calling the police department and letting them know that this person had an apartment to move into in about 3 days' time, and that having them move on would complicate the process. And they worked with me. The person was able to remain there for another few days, and then we ended up signing the lease, and that person is still housed, and it's been probably about 1.5 years now, and they're doing great. Our main goal at Francis Place is just doing what we can to support the person towards their personal goals in maintaining housing stability, which can look like quite a lot of different things. Working, short-term goals, long-term goals, just basic life skills. We've had some people in Francis Place and stably housed for almost the whole duration that the building has been open, if not the whole duration. So we have some residents who've been here for about 5 or 6 years. Other residents will come into Francis Place for maybe 1 year or 2, and then recently I've had 2 different residents move out of Francis Place, but was able to find a more suitable living situation for them to move into. So they did not exit Francis Place onto the street. They exited into another housing program. So that was very exciting for me. Let's see. Yeah, Francis Place is a very fast-paced, very chaotic environment, but yeah, it's kind of all I got. We're doing a lot here. Do you have any specific questions that I haven't addressed? Oh, I think you're muted.
We can go into the Q&A if you're winding down. I did put some questions in there, but Banush asks, and you spoke to this, Brady, what is the average amount of time right now for individuals or families to be placed in housing? So you talked about it from the point that you received the client from coordinated entry, but I want to be really frank that the wait in coordinated entry is significantly longer. It takes a long time, especially for the most intensive support. And the reason for that is because it's permanent supportive housing, right? You don't have to move out. That's the whole idea of it. So for someone to move into an opening, someone needs to move out, or we need to include a new resource. And actually we've done that with including new resources over the past 5 years. Opportunity Council had Dorothy Place transition from transitional housing to permanent. 22 North opened, and then the Opportunity Council acquired additional case management to support vouchers in the community in those scattered sites that Brady was talking about. And if you look at the point in time count, if you can look at past ones on Opportunity Council or even the health department's websites. But if you look historically, every time there's a drop in chronic homelessness, it's because we've had a new resource added to the system. Right now, I want to talk about families because Banush mentioned that. What's happening with families because of the pandemic is really concerning. Families, by and large, although some go to permanent supportive housing, are served with rapid rehousing. That's the most frequent intervention for them. But when the pandemic hit, your kids are home from school, your job's interrupted, you can't get to that stability piece that Marisa was talking about so you can exit your time-limited intervention. So if no one's leaving that program, no one's going into that program. And so what's been happening over the past year is that families are just stacking up and waiting, and their wait has significantly increased. Now, I don't want to be totally doom and gloom because we have new resources to assist families on the horizon, and I feel really hopeful that that's going to move the system through again. But 22% of homeless individuals being under 18 is really concerning to me. Everybody homeless is concerning to me, but children in particular. Anybody else want to talk to the time it takes to place into housing? I'll go to the next question, which is from Dee Dee. In terms of aiming at more affordable housing overall, what can citizens do? Support and advocate for rent increase caps, other ideas? Are the local agencies who have the authority to make these changes, or is it more on the state and federal level? I'll answer that a little bit. Rent control is illegal in Washington State. It's been illegal in Washington State since 1981. Rents are also out of control. So again, if you look at the point in time count, every time there's an increase, there's a corresponding increase in rents. That's a real concern. And that's the piece of this puzzle that we can't control. And it even affects our homeless housing programs, because in scattered site units, when we're able to house people in the community, this annual apartment building that will master lease to us, we're subject to the market rate. We can only pay so many dollars in rent. It's not sky is the limit. So as the market outpaces what called the fair market rate is, those opportunities become smaller to house people. So that's a concern. But what can the community do? I would say pay attention to what's happening in your community, vote, engage with advocacy groups like the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, and talk to people about the stigma and fear of homelessness. I'm trying to talk about people who don't want to rent to homeless people or don't want homeless people in their neighborhood. Homelessness could be any of us, right? It could happen to anyone. So one thing you can do is talk to the people around you about that stigma. And I think if more of that message is out there, is that homeless people are people with deserving of housing like all of us are, then we can encourage more landlords to work with us. Does anyone want to talk about what you can do besides me? Okay, now I'm going to ask my own questions now.
Terry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I've got a terrible connection now, and I apologize. Marisa again. As far as, the community helping out as well, all of the points that you made are so valid and so important. The other thing that I think that needs to get mentioned is that in the event an advocate starts making a relationship with the person in the housing situation that we're talking about, being able to create a trusting relationship with that person to honestly talk about what's going on is also extremely helpful, because there are many times, and I can speak from experience on this, where a landlord has not received information from a tenant, but it's something extreme going on that affects their housing, affects their ability to pay or maintain, what have you. But because the client in particular is either afraid or has just not approached the landlord yet, if that landlord is in the dark, they're just going to follow policy and procedure on their end. That's where we all get to step in and say, wait a second, I've been talking to this person. I just found out something extremely drastic. And of course, we want to honor HIPAA, so we're not going to go blabbing everybody's information out there, but we're going to present it in such a way to let the landlord know, if I can do a warm connection between you two so this can get talked about, maybe a plan could happen to help salvage what's happened, or save them, or change the outcome. Another big thing is anyone that's coming in that starts talking about how they've received a pay or vacate notice, or that they're definitely moving towards an eviction. We want to look at advocacy in ways that will catch those things early, so we can support the people and step in and start talking about different ways to go about these things. Now, keep in mind, we all know there's certain rules and regulations and what have you with laws and so forth and so on, and I'm not even going to get into that whole situation, but we all know they exist. But long story short, within that advocacy, what if we have the ability to change a really nasty eviction into a mutual termination? That is something that will drastically change any type of negative points that gets put on someone's history for housing. A mutual termination is so much easier to present to someone to be rehoused versus a full-on eviction or something worse. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Marisa. And I think that you spoke to the housing search process pretty well. And I think all of you, Leah and Brady and Marisa, can you talk about how you support clients with good tenancy skills?
One thing we do at Opportunity Council is we do provide renter's education to everyone that we work with. So in the lease, we're providing a a pamphlet or packet about renter rights and responsibilities. We definitely work one-on-one to advocate for and support clients through that. And we also have our financial literacy and renters education course that is a really great opportunity for all people in the community, not just Opportunity Council clients, to learn about how to be a good tenant and what their own rights are. I know I took it and learned a lot personally. And it's something that we can definitely connect clients to.
I took that class too, and I learned how to pay off my credit card. And this is long before I worked at Opportunity Council, so shout out to that program. Brady, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, being focused on harm reduction and just working on people's housing stability, I find myself, whatever the issue may be, where a person is being too loud and not respecting the volume level that they're outputting and impacting their neighbors, or sorry, I'm getting a phone call from Rick Larson for some reason. Where's that coming from? Oh,
if it makes you feel any better, I got one of those 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, my watch started talking. It's never done that before. Yeah, we basically have a lot of conversations with clients about this is what's going on. This is what's receiving complaints or is causing concern that could impact your housing. But here's a way that you can, if it's listening to music, here's a way that you can continue to listen to music, but it's not going to impact your housing or cause complaints or be a concern to other people. Or if it's yelling, we have a guy who is often responding to a lot of internal stimuli, and which causes him to yell and scream. And he's actually, this was mostly self-directed, and I think this is really great. But his solution was, instead of yelling and screaming and disturbing his neighbors or escalating other people in the building, he decided to just take it outside into a wide open area where nobody is, and take a screaming outside and scream. And I've even watched him go outside and scream and kind of get it all out of the system and start to come back to the building and realize he had a little bit more to let out, and turn back around and go back out and get it all out and come back into the building and then quietly ask for a cup of coffee or something. So yeah, it's just finding creative solutions to reduce the negative impact that some behaviors might be having.
Thanks, Brady. We talked about stigma a little bit already, but I like this question. What do you wish people knew about your work? Like people who don't do this work, what do you wish they knew? Brady's going to come up with a good one, I can tell. Thinking.
Well, one of my fellow housing case managers, Kyle, I feel like the stigma that landlords can put on our clients sometimes transfers to us, just because maybe they don't know who we are coming into the situation. And Kyle went over to a client's house, and nothing major happened, but a slight, I guess you'd call it an accident. No damage was caused, but something happened, and the landlord saw it, and then basically interrogated a case manager as to who they were and what, why did this look sketchy, and Kyle was like, I'm here I'm working with my client, and I'm a professional in this capacity, and I don't understand why you're coming down on me so hard. But so that was kind of interesting. And just kind of going back to stigma, I had a client who was housed, and then being housed, they were using that opportunity to make sandwiches for their street family who was still out on the street. So they had people swinging by occasionally, picking up a sandwich, taking a shower, and then leaving again. And the neighbors got concerned and thought that probably drug dealing was happening. because all these people were showing up on bicycles because they couldn't afford a car, and just the frequency of guests. So I had to have a conversation with my client and then realized that, it's sandwiches and it's showers. And is that really, a terrible thing that's happening? Is that unsavory? So then I had a conversation with the landlord and they kind of relaxed about it. But
that does not sound like a lease violation either.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's occasional guests who are there short term.
Brady, since I've got you on the spot, can you talk about low barrier and housing first?
Yeah. So we put folks in housing first, which hence the name. And
Brady, I think you got muted.
a ton of phone calls. We don't require that they are sober or that they've sorted out their legal situations or anything like that before we put them in housing. So we work through what can be a long process, but we get them into housing, and then at that point, we sit down and work on a housing stability plan, and often ask questions like, do you have any, ongoing legal cases that we can help with? Do you have any substance use that you would like to address? Do you, kind of go through the checklist, get to know them as a person, but then still largely leave it up to them to direct the course of their own life. And as long as it's not harmful to themselves or to other people, kind of let them make their own choices, but encourage them in a positive direction. So,
thanks, Brady.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask a couple more questions, and then we'll probably have to wrap up and move on. But this is for all three of you, because I think case managers in all capacities use motivational interviewing really heavily. Can you talk about what that is and how that skill is helpful in the work?
It's definitely a big part of diversion, because with diversion, we're looking at people's internal resources. So there's no way you're going to learn what those are without asking a lot of good questions and being able to dive deep into what a person wants out of their own housing plan, because we are not providing housing, we're supporting their plan. So just like with any of our goals, personal or professional, it's hard. It's going to be a lot more challenging to reach those goals if they're not goals we set for ourselves. So finding out what clients are interested in pursuing themselves so we can walk alongside and support that goal is just really important with, I think, all of our housing interventions.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, Chris has a good question. Are there volunteer opportunities for community members, and how can they get connected? I want to just lead off with that by saying that Opportunity Council also houses the Whatcom Volunteer Center, and anyone can look for opportunities there. And I think I've noticed some being solicited by Homes Now Not Later in that venue. Any other community volunteer?
Right now, under normal circumstances, yes, you can volunteer at Francis Place. You would have to undergo kind of a background screening. It's pretty straightforward. That being said, we are not allowing guests in the building right now due to COVID. So we don't currently have any volunteers, haven't had any volunteers for about a year now. We hope that will change, but we don't know.
I want to point out that Lorena put a link to the FLARE program in the chat, if anyone's interested in exploring that. And then Barbara has a question about turnover. Is there high turnover in case managers? And if so, what could be done to increase retention so we have an experienced workforce? That's the million-dollar question, Barbara. But I would like to hear from people who do that work what they think.
Yes. If you looked at my schedule over the past 5 years, you would see a lot of interviews because we do have a lot of turnover. It's a really challenging job. you know, their burnout is real. We all know that. And you know, the work is hard and sometimes underpaid. So Opportunity Council, I know, is doing a lot to look at, you know, ways to promote self-care and wellness. As overall as an agency, looking at compensation and what we can do, what makes sense in our community. You know, if you have the answers, we'd love to hear them. But yeah, it is a problem, and it's a challenge for sure.
Thanks, Leah. And Virginia says more money. That's, yeah, that goes without saying, I think. Banush has a question for Brady. If a person's record's been flagged by the police department, is there a way to take the flag off?
Well, so with our housing, we do run a background check on people to put them in housing at Francis Place. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head that would prevent someone from moving into Francis Place would be if they have like a history of arson, because we would be concerned about them burning our building down. Other things, we may see them as flags on, you know, someone's criminal history, but they don't necessarily present as a barrier to housing. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
I don't know how that works, flagging someone's police records. However, if someone has an open warrant, I know that case managers can be really helpful in helping to get those warrants quashed. So yes, I don't know if that gets near the yes. Answer. Let's see. Cliff points out that the people we see, and I almost didn't read this because I got teary. The people you see without housing are your sibling, your parent, your cousin. I can't do it. Read the chat. Marisa wishes that people knew that HIPAA is really important and that we don't give out personal information or share any identifying details to anyone on social media. The case managers follow that. Oh, and Amber says that you can volunteer at Wise Buys thrift store benefiting the Y that reopened last week. Congratulations to the Y on that, by the way. I know that that transferred from Lydia Place to the Y, and it originated at the Y, I think. If I have this wrong, please jump in and correct me, but I just think that's really cool to preserve that resource in our community. And Chase says that LEAD could be a program to work with for clients who have active warrants. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Since I just embarrassed myself by crying in a meeting I'm leading. Let's move on the agenda then. We do have some new steering committee members. So Tommy McCullough from LEAD, thank you, Tommy. And Katie Stevens from Unity Care Northwest has joined steering, and that group meets every month that we don't meet is the larger coalition, and works on not only setting this agenda and planning, but also works on that plan to end homelessness. We have some vacancies, and I'm wondering if it would be better for me just to ask Jasmine to share out the roster so you can see what seats are empty and talk to folks that you think you might like to nominate. Is this a good idea? Thumbs up? Okay, I will do that instead of just read off who's empty. And that moves us into an update from the city. Samia, are you here for a quick update?
Hi, yes, thank you. So appreciative of the agencies and community members who are dedicated to providing these services. So thank you all so very, very much. The city is working hard to get funding out into the community. There's a community development advisory board meeting tonight that will be discussing that. I'll put the link in the chat if folks are interested in listening in or going back and listening to it after the fact. We're going to be getting our action plan moving, which is basically our budget cycle starting July 1st for housing services and other human services in the community. And so that's what the advisory board will be discussing. And it contains support for a lot of things that have been talked about, permanent supportive housing at dedicated locations around the city, as well as diversion and rapid rehousing and other types of programs. But we always welcome more public input and community involvement in that process. And we're also working hard with Low Income Housing Institute and then with Road to Home for the tiny house village being planned at the old Clean Green site. So thanks to all of you involved with that as well. And I'll stop there. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Samia. Glad you mentioned that. I forgot to talk about that. Whatcom County. I don't know whether Chris or Barbara is going to give us an update, but
I can
go
get
ahead.
Started.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, well, my name is Barbara Johnson-Venna, by the way, and I'm a housing program specialist with the Whatcom County Health Department. And Chris D'Onofrio, also here today, is our other housing specialist. So I wanted to focus on informing people about some of the new funding resources that are coming our way to the community. There is great news in one piece of legislation that is referred to as it's House Bill 1590. And the funding out of this bill will be for affordable housing, related housing services, mental health and behavioral health facilities, and related services. And this was passed by a councilmatic vote by both the city of Bellingham and our county council. So kudos to our council members for supporting this funding, which will be available in our community. It's substantial funding. It's based on a sales tax, so it's 0.1%, and it will offer up to a total of, or I should say an estimate of about $3 million for the city of Bellingham annually, and another $2 million for the county. So altogether, between the city and the county, $5 million. And this will be for folks who have an income of under 60% AMI, falling under the following groups: individuals with behavioral health disabilities, veterans, senior citizens, people experiencing homelessness or unaccompanied homeless youth, people with disabilities, and domestic violence survivors. So it's a wide range of subpopulations that can benefit from these funds. So thanks to our elected officials for supporting that. There's a bill that Representative Nicole Macri, who is one of our housing super supporters throughout the state. Nicole Macri has supported a number of bills that have passed and been successful in establishing more support for homeless housing programs. And the current bill she is pushing is House Bill 1277, and that would actually raise our document recording fees by $100, which is substantial. That would create an eviction prevention rental assistance program in the Department of Commerce. And this funding would go to Commerce directly and then would be distributed to the counties. There's a tiny amount that would be set aside for permanent supportive housing. The majority, I believe, for eviction prevention. And then the American Rescue Plan Act. This is a federal act that is expected to provide an estimated $1.1 billion for Washington State. And that act is targeting multiple uses and needs for communities throughout the country. It does have a section in how it can be used for homelessness assistance and supportive services. So I haven't had much of a chance to review that yet, but as time goes on, we'll learn more about how that act can benefit our homeless housing crisis response system and contribute to affordable housing needs in the community. So I guess that's about it. Chris, you might want to mention, have something to say about the point in time count. I'm not sure. Oh, also we did an RFP for housing case management recently. The applications have been reviewed, and we plan to fund 5 out of 7 of the applications. Those would be the highest scoring that clearly met the criteria. So we're excited to move into being able to continue our support for housing case management. And we're not the only game in town that does that. The city of Bellingham does as well, and others. So we're one of a few others. That's all I have.
Thanks. Chris, did you want to say something about the point in time count? Maybe something I didn't hit on?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Terry. It was just a different year. So the count was a little bit different. We're going to be working on that report together, the county and Opportunity Council, and hopefully have that out by the end of the month. That's our target. Since I got the mic in my hand, I'll just point out that it has been a heck of a year. A lot of new challenges, a lot of new opportunities, some pretty big shifts in our political leadership. And I believe there are reasons to be hopeful. It's going to take a while to overcome some of these challenges we're facing right now, but there are new resources coming, and I think we're in a decent position to make some real progress. There's a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of groundwork that's being laid right now, and I feel good about the community we have and the support that I've heard detailed today. So I'll just leave it with that.
Thanks, Chris. I feel the same way. And I was struck when I was thinking about what Barbara was discussing with the funding. And I'm just going to ask a question. Have you seen a funding landscape quite like this ever?
Not even remotely close.
And it's surprising to me, like you get this pot of money and it sounds like a lot of money, but you have to spend it really, really fast. So it's challenging for everyone, but I know that all of our partners are stepping up for the challenge. Oh, Banish has a question. Is anything being done to increase the number of case managers and social workers in Bellingham and the county? So housing case managers, I would say yes, that request for proposals that Barbara just mentioned is specific to fund case management. And I think there's discussion at the city level about city funds potentially supporting case management as well. There's other kinds of case managers and social workers, right? There's some that work with the elderly or with disabled or with medical needs or with mental health. So there's lots of different types of case management, but specific to housing, those are the 2 resources I can think of. And if there's nothing else on that, our last thing on the agenda is additional topics. So if you have an agency update you want to share or a thought on what you'd like to see in an upcoming meeting, we'd love to hear it. Well, if you
I've already spoken, but I just wanted to add how grateful I am to our case managers. And I know how hard your work is. It is, you know.
You were a case manager, right?
I was for many years, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. And things have changed a lot. And I did not have to experience the dilemma of finding housing for my clients.
That's
So
really challenging.
we were able to focus on, you know, other issues. And I feel for both the clients and the case managers in this situation that just hang in there. Your work is so important. I don't think the community knows, which is part of the reason we wanted to feature this particular topic today, just to let people know that really you're the foundation of how people are getting and staying in housing. So
Thanks, Barbara. I really appreciate that.
Me too.
Well, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn to our next meeting, which will be in June on the 3rd, and same time, same Zoom. I'll see you then. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
thank you, Terry.